What we can never be when we look at the Plantagenets is modern ourselves. Of course we're modern readers, of course we think people should love their children and not murder their house guests. But of course we know that if we had been there, we would probably be that. I don't think that any of us, well, I hope we would have done better than Elizabeth Woodville. I hope we would have said to our husbands, don't kill this absolutely innocent man. But what she has that perhaps we wouldn't have had is the total insight that one death in the Tower can very well lead to another. And it seemed to me that writing the novel, the resonance of, in a sense, the Plantagenets' move towards terror was going to be lived out for them in the death of the princes in the Tower and Richard III's move towards terror as well. I think the Plantagenet men have this directness which comes from being able to exercise power, and because they're the ruling family most of the time and they're ruling England as monarchs, they have an absolute direct access. They are the fount of law, order, justice, patronage, wealth. If you're king, you own everything. If you're queen, you own pretty well everything as long as he remains king, or as long as you remain absolutely recognised as his queen in favour. So the women's life is, in a sense, much more nuanced. It's much more dangerous. Physically, you're always in much more danger, even in peacetime, because you're still having to face childbirth every year or every other year. It's much more risky because the favour of men and the power of men is absolutely overwhelming. So in a sense, even when you're Queen of England, you're still living under an incredibly dominant patriarchy. So the sense of having difficulty with the power of others, which is so much a modern concept, is something that the medieval women share with us. When we look at Elizabeth Woodville's relationship to her children, I think we have to not be modern. We have to see, first of all, these are the currency. You have to have boys because they're going to be heirs to the throne. You have to have girls because you're going to marry them to make the next generation of alliances. These are political pawns, and everybody knows that. We don't know it because we're modern and because we think you should love your children, but they are first and foremost that kind of currency. They are part of the currency of power. However, having said all of that, clearly there's a bond between Jacquetta and her daughter Elizabeth Woodville, which is so strong that when Elizabeth is at her times of greatest danger, you know, when she's in the Tower, when she's in Sanctuary, her mother always goes to her. There's never a moment when Elizabeth Woodville is really in trouble, but her mother's always there until her death. It's very touching. Clearly, you know, when Elizabeth Woodville was widowed and had no money, she went home to her mother. So there's a very strong maternal bond there, and I think it possible that Elizabeth carried it through to her own children. Certainly she lost both sons, one almost certainly to death, one we simply don't know, the princes in the Tower, and her children, you know, were dispersed from her, but even when she was in disgrace in old age, Elizabeth Woodville was visited by her daughter, then Queen Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, the daughter, made an effort, really a very substantial effort, to stay in touch with her mother, even when that was quite difficult to do.